And whenever we look at these acts, I think we see especially the two that I want to go over today. The healings of Jesus that he did on the Sabbath. And from this I want us to learn what the meaning of the Sabbath really is through Jesus. He's the one to explain it to us. And so first of all, we see that the Sabbath's meaning has to do with restoration, revival, and refreshment. And I want us to notice the first one, restore. The dictionary definition of restore is to bring back to a former, original, or normal condition and bring back to a state of health and soundness. And so in these healings, we learn what Jesus' attitude is toward us. And this is his attitude toward us. You are a most valuable person to Jesus. Others may not treat us as we're most valuable, but Jesus does. And if you want to know how Jesus treats you in your need, just look at how he treated other people in their need. And how he treats other people in their need, and it was especially done on the Sabbath. Because there was so much misunderstanding about the meaning of the Sabbath, what his purpose was. For example, a woman in the synagogue of worship was physically bent. She couldn't even straighten up. And so Luke, the beloved physician, uses medical terminology to describe her. On the Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues. Now he's already teaching. And then it seems that he notices someone as he's teaching. And a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. And the Greek word translated crippled or disabling denotes a weakness, a frailty. Luke carefully records her history in such notations as for 18 years it was that way. Can you imagine being bent over like that for 18 years? He diagnoses the condition bent over or bent double with a certain Greek word, a Greek medical term that refers to the curvature of the spine. And he describes her condition further with several Greek words translated, could not straighten up at all. And so when Jesus saw her, he called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then he put his hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. A Greek word translated "you are loosed" or "set free" is the ancient Greek medical term for releasing or for relaxing tendons and membranes and for taking off bandages. And the author of the book, Luke the physician, writes, Luke states that the several stages in the process of recovery. First, the relaxing of the contracted muscles of the chest. And as this of itself would not have been sufficient to give her an erect posture, on account of the stiffening of the muscles through so many years, the second part of the operation is described by another Greek word, which means the curvature, the removal of the curvature of the spine. Let's think of her feelings as we read this. Think of her feelings. On a Sabbath, Jesus was teaching in one of the synagogues, and a woman was there who had been crippled by a spirit for 18 years. She was bent over and could not straighten up at all. There's no indication that this woman was angry or bitter because of her condition. She's in the synagogue. And I think that she's in the synagogue for encouragement and to be able to worship God and have her focus in the right place. And that day she's in for an unbelievable surprise. She walks into the synagogue with her illness. She walks out completely healthy. She's healed. And this happens after 18 years of such a condition. Jesus abundantly extends kindness to her She sees how important she is in the eyes of Jesus. And she may not have seen it in other people. In fact, I wouldn't doubt they just avoided her, many of them. But she saw how important she was to Jesus. We need to reflect upon that. That's how important we are to Him. Each one of us. When Jesus saw her, He called her forward and said to her, "Woman, you are set free from your infirmity." Then He put His hands on her, and immediately she straightened up and praised God. Indignant, because Jesus had healed on the Sabbath. The synagogue leader said to the people, "There are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath." I don't know how he said it, but I'm sure it was kind of mean-spirited in what he was saying. The Lord answered him, "You hypocrites! Doesn't each of you on the Sabbath untie your ox or donkey from the stall and lead it out to give it water? Then should not this woman, a daughter of Abraham, whom Satan has kept bound for 18 long years, be set free on the Sabbath day from what bound her?" When he said this, all his opponents were humiliated. It wasn't just the synagogue leader. There were others. All of his opponents were humiliated, but the people were delighted with the wonderful things that he was doing. And so, did she feel important to Jesus? Did she feel important to the synagogue ruler? When Jesus healed her, the synagogue ruler became indignant, scornful, furious, angry. He scornfully felt that helping or healing people on the Sabbath violates the Sabbath law. No work on the Sabbath. And his Sabbath law was most important to him. I see that coming through. He had no love, kindness, compassion, mercy for this woman. So did she feel loved by the synagogue ruler? Do you think she was a complete stranger to him? This is not a big metropolis. He has probably seen her many, many times. She has seen him many, many times. And here he comes out with such violent, uncaring language toward her. So if animals had feelings, would they feel important to people like the synagogue ruler? Oh yeah, the donkey or the ox, they would feel great. They would take it to the water. They're being refreshed. They're being helped. She would be put off. Should we be put off? Should we put off, try to get this right, should we put off being kind until another more convenient day? That's the message I get from him, from that synagogue ruler. Do not withhold good from those who deserve it when it is in your power to act. Do not say to your neighbor, "Come back later, I'll give it tomorrow." That's what Proverbs 3:27 and 28 say, and I'm sure the synagogue ruler knew that. Time after time we see this attitude expressed by the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the synagogue rulers, to not do anything. That's their attitude, violate their Sabbath laws. And in their minds, this was a violation of it. Now, one of the things that Matthew records for us is that Jesus came to fulfill the law. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. So the synagogue ruler did not understand the meaning of the Sabbath. Jesus fulfills the Sabbath purpose by what he does. A proper way to obey a command is to fulfill the purpose for which it's given, that God gives it. And so what was the purpose of the Sabbath? Well, in Deuteronomy it says, "Observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son or daughter, nor your male or female servant, nor your ox, your donkey, or any of your animals, or any foreigner residing in your towns, so that your male and female servants may rest as you do. What is the purpose of the Sabbath? To rest. To rest. Is rest good for you? Is that healthy? 6 days you shall labor, but on the seventh day you shall rest. Even during the plowing season and harvest, you must rest. Hey, I'm busy. I've got all this harvest to get in. I don't have time to take a break, to do anything like that. I've got to keep going and going and going until I have it done. No. God says take the rest. You know, when we take the rest, then we're rejuvenated, we're helped, we've got invigorated, have more energy to do more. What was the purpose of the Sabbath day? So would a proper application of this command be that you could help an ill person or a man hanging on the side of a cliff if it was a matter of life and death? But otherwise, wait until the next day. That's what the Pharisees taught. Now, I don't know if it's a matter of life and death for this poor guy on the cliff here. He might be able to last another day. I don't know. But I'm looking at it thinking, no, it would be allowed to rescue him. But this woman has been coming to that synagogue for 18 years, bent over like that. Was it a matter of life and death? That's why he said what he said. And so that was the view of the synagogue leader. So when Jesus healed a woman, the synagogue leader lashed back, saying, there are 6 days for work, so come and be healed on those days, not on the Sabbath. It was precisely on this issue that Jesus repeatedly collided with the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the synagogue leaders. These spiritual leaders put a tremendous burden on people with all their made-up rules about the Sabbath and had missed its purpose. Jesus, because of all the burdens put upon people, gave his invitation to burdened people. He said, come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. You'll find rest for your souls, for my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. So you will find rest for your souls. You're not getting it from the laws of the Pharisees, the Sabbath laws of the Pharisees. One of the sections of the Talmud, it's a Jewish writing. It comprises the oral law that was passed down. They finally wrote it down. And the Gemara was the rabbinic discussions about it. In other words, commentary on the Mishnah. The two parts, the Mishnah and the Gemara, make up the Talmud. It has 24 chapters listing all the Sabbath laws. 24! Can you imagine what's in there? All their rules. And doing what Jesus did was a violation. And so we see another example. It's about reviving a man. After healing the woman who was so bent, Luke gives another example. Jesus is invited into the home of a prominent Pharisee for a meal on a Sabbath. And as they're reclining there, in walks a miserable man with extreme bodily swelling. He revives a man back to life and gives him strength without the misery of abnormal swelling. The misery that brings. I don't know what his feet look like. Maybe something like this. Here, you can get pictures that look a lot worse than that. But that's bad enough right there. His feet may have looked something like this. It happened that when he went into the house of one of the leaders of the Pharisees on the Sabbath to eat bread, they were watching him closely. They were watching Jesus closely. And there in front of him was a man suffering from dropsy, according to this translation. It comes from the Greek word. They translate this Greek word dropsy, or some translations of abnormal swelling of the body. And it comes from, part of the word comes from internal water. And so from that we get the abnormal swelling of the body is with water. And so Luke employs this medical terminology that's in Greek. We see the word, the transliterated word, that is, occurring nowhere else in the Bible, but which frequently appears in the medical literature, including the writings of Hippocrates. The Greek word is derived from a word that means water. It means literally a surplus of fluid in the body tissues. And so some translations give an abnormal swelling of the body instead of dropsy, which I mentioned. And so a prominent Pharisee invites Jesus to his home as one of his guests. And Jesus is carefully being watched by all of these leaders. And there in front of him was a man suffering from abnormal swelling of his body. Now remember what day this is? This is the Sabbath. And one of the ways for us to realize the definition of the Sabbath is let Jesus define it for us. What is it about? Jesus asked the Pharisees and experts in the law, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? He asked that question before he actually heals the man. Is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath or not? And with that question, he makes the situation difficult because they have to choose between compassion and their list of rules, their traditions. Are they going to show any decent, common kindness? We hope it's common. If they said no, it is not permitted to show compassion on the Sabbath, then they would admit that their precious traditions are more important than this man and his misery. And if they said, yes, it's permitted, then they would have authorized Jesus to violate their list of laws. And do you think that the word would get around? Or what they had done? Of course. So caught in this Jesus ethical checkmate, the religious leaders, what do? They remain silent. They don't say anything. But they remain silent. So taking hold of the man, he healed him. He healed him and sent him on his way. And then he asked them, if one of you has a child, we don't have the donkey here, child, or an ox that falls into a well on the Sabbath day, will you not immediately pull it out? And they had nothing to say. All of these laws for the Sabbath became an incredible burden. But even they would not violate. But even they would violate in a situation like Jesus described. They would violate. They would go after their ox, wouldn't they? Luke, the physician, linked the two healings to make a point. One is from the 13th chapter, one is from the 14th chapter. And he has a little story in between there, a parable, which we're going to go over in just a moment. Jesus didn't shy away from healing on the Sabbath just because the nation's most powerful people opposed him. He didn't shy away from it. And so we see refreshment coming in the lives. There's a new vigor, there's a new energy to people's lives. And that is what we see Jesus doing, especially on the Sabbath for people. The Sabbath was made for man, or for people, and not man for the Sabbath. So the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. Jesus states what the purpose of the Sabbath law is. Jesus is cutting through all the clutter of the Pharisees' teachings that burden people's lives, and he's clearing the way to the real purpose for the day. And the real purpose is God did not create people for the sake of the Sabbath. But the Sabbath was for the sake of people's health and well-being. So any action which promotes rest, relief, restoration, revival, refreshment, general well-being, Jesus promotes for the Sabbath. You could say wellness. That's what the Sabbath is about. Promoting wellness was not merely proper on the Sabbath, the Sabbath was the most appropriate day for rest, relief, and well-being. Those were the results God made the Sabbath to achieve in people's lives. They were the purpose of the Sabbath. Jesus appears to have cured people by preference on the Sabbath day, because such actions fulfilled the Sabbath day's purpose, and also he's doing a great teaching. He's explaining, they've been taught over and over again, the misleading teachings of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law about what the Sabbath is, and it's not. Now, what do we find the early church doing? On the first day of the week, we came together to break bread. Breaking bread was a term used for the Lord's Supper. And they came together to come in. The Sabbath is actually the seventh day, a Saturday of the week. The first day is Sunday. They didn't meet on a Saturday. They met on the first day of the week because that is the day that God raised Jesus from the death, burial, and then his resurrection. He was raised. And it was through God. The Sabbath commemorates the seventh day after the 6 days of creation. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them. But he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy. Today, we remember the first day of the week because that is the day God raised Jesus from the dead. There's no command for Sundays for us to not work, but we still practice the spirit of the Sabbath. If you understand from Jesus' definition, that is a day for wellness. We give thanks for what Jesus has done for us. We did it with the Lord's Supper this morning. You know, Paul refers to the cup when he writes to the church at Corinth as the cup of thanksgiving. We are being thankful for what he has done. And gratitude is wonderful for our health, to be grateful. We also sing songs of praise. Singing is healthy for us. We are to meet together to encourage one another. Not neglecting the assemblies of ourselves together as the habit of some is, but encouraging one another. And all the more as you see the day drawing near. That's the meaning. So all of these things give the spirit of the Sabbath. But it's not the Sabbath. It's the first day of the week, the day that Jesus was raised from the dead. Now in between these events of healing, he tells a parable. And I've got a little seed there. That is a big seed, isn't it? Well, it's the mustard seed. So in between these two healings, he gives the parable of the mustard seed. What is the kingdom of God like? What shall I compare it to? It is like a mustard seed, which a man took and planted in his garden. It grew and became a tree, and the birds perched in its branches. I wasn't supposed to have a sound. Those are birds, of course. The kingdom grows in the person's heart and in the lives of more and more people. And we see this in Christ's church. God's grace saves us, and what are we to do because of that grace? We are to practice doing good to others. So the mustard seed is the smallest of seed, but it grows to the largest garden plant. Even birds can perch on its branches. And so when we do little good deeds, we may only see tiny results like the mustard seed. Now, I'm sorry about the music. That was vocal, though, wasn't it? It was from the birds. It's just a little seed. And often it seems to me like we do little deeds of kindness, which is part of the kingdom of God. And there's so little they're like a mustard seed. And we don't really get a chance to see them grow. But they do. This is a picture of Raymond. who became a vital member of the diabetes support group several years ago. He came because his daughter started coming to church, and he started coming to the diabetes meetings. He eventually started coming to church. He was on insulin. He had already lost 180 pounds, and he still weighed 280 pounds. So at one time, he felt ashamed of his appearance and would go nowhere. But somehow he mustered up the willpower to start walking in the mornings and in the evenings and eating less. And he was eventually able to lose 180 pounds. He came to take better care of his diabetes, and he even became a Christian. He towered over me. 280 pounds. You know, I'm a big guy, aren't I? But this guy towered over me. And so he wanted to become a Christian. So I asked one of the members here, Dean Bass, James Bass's father, to baptize him. And he baptized Raymond. Immersed him in the water and brought him back up. And I wish I could tell you multiple stories like this, but I can't. My actions seem small, like a mustard seed. But they've grown because, well, I've done so many of these little acts, little mustard seed deeds. We don't know what will happen with our acts of kindness in the lives of people. But I know this. Remember what Jesus thinks about you and me. You are a most valuable person. We've seen Jesus' wonderful acts of kindness on the Sabbath day. He fulfills the purpose of the day. And we see in Jesus the fulfillment of an Old Testament proverb. Proverbs 19:22, it says, what is desirable in a man? What is desirable in a man is his kindness. And it is better to be a poor man than a liar. Well, it looks to me like whenever you look at the Pharisees, the teachers of the law, the synagogue leaders, they were misleading people about the real purpose of the Sabbath. You could say they were the second part of that proverb, liar. But in Jesus, we see what is desirable. Kindness. Let's find ways to show kindness to the refugees from Ukraine and to people in this community. With the clothing house, we're kind, especially those who are working there. The efforts may appear small, like a mustard seed. But our kindness can grow in the hearts of those in need. And we don't know what the end effect of it is. We may see some, but we don't know what the end result is of these little kind deeds that we do. They can be growing, like the kingdom of God growing. It's like a mustard seed. And so let's continue to do all that we can. Think of, look for opportunities. And do that. And we'll be fulfilling what, God raised Jesus from the dead, and because of his grace we are saved. But when Paul writes to Titus, he said, yes, we're saved through his grace because we've trusted in him. And he says for us not to sit back and just be so thankful for that wonderful deed that happened for us, the salvation. But we are to be devoted to do good works, good deeds. That's Titus 3, verse 8. So let's strive our best to do that and follow the example of Jesus in doing it. So if you're subject